All right, good morning. We made it to Friday, which means it's time for the first Pass Rush Friday of the year. And the pass rush that we had against the Broncos was kind of interesting. There were quite a few pass attempts that we faced. Wilson dropped back quite a few times. And on quite a few of those dropbacks, you saw Wilson with a clean pocket. So a lot of people came out of that game visually thinking that the Seahawks didn't do a good job generating pressure. And yet, the numbers that I've seen after that game, the actual pass rush analytics from ESPN, PFR, PFF, etc., says it was actually pretty good. So I want to talk about why that might be, and then we'll get into the actual numbers. But first, let me just say one thing here. Different sources are going to have different numbers here. That just is what it is. I think PFR keeps their own pressure data. PFF keeps different ones. ESPN keeps different ones. For instance, I believe ESPN actually said that Poona Ford had 3 pressures against the Broncos, and PFR gave him none. So there is potential for discrepancy there. I generally go with PFR unless I see something that I think clearly has to be wrong. And then I'll personally adjust it based off what I see versus what their numbers are. If I see a situation where a player was clobbering the quarterback just as the ball came out, but PFR didn't give them a quarterback pressure, then I'm going to, then I'm just going to adjust it because at the end of the day, while pressure numbers are subjective, certain ones aren't. So, with that being said, as for the overall quarterback pressure we got against the Broncos, I'm going to say it right now. The number of quarterback pressures we got per individual player is actually pretty high. I think there are 2 things at play there that make the number bigger than it feels like it should have been based off what you saw in that game. Number 1, sometimes you get multiple players getting a pressure on one play. Like if Daryl Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu are both getting to Wilson right as he's letting the ball go, they're both getting a pressure even though there was only one pressure. And that's okay because multiple pressures from multiple people on the same play is probably better than just one, right? Just logically speaking. And the second thing is some of those pressures are planned because it's a screen. Because if you're running a screen pass and you're trying to get the ball to the running back, it actually benefits you to get pass rushers past the running back so that when you get the running back the ball, they're kind of out of the play. And you saw that a few times against the Broncos. They threw how many passes to running backs in that game? 15? So you're going to see kind of intentional quarterback pressures on those plays sometimes. So keep that in mind. With that being said, these numbers are pretty good. Let's start with the defensive line. Shelby Harris had 2 pressures according to PFR, and Quentin Jefferson had 2 as well. ESPN, I think, actually gave both these guys... I think Shelby Harris had 3 and Quentin Jefferson had 5. ESPN, I think they keep track of pressures the same way that the Utah Jazz scorekeepers kept track of John Stockton assists. It was just like way off. No sane person would possibly give John Stockton an assist on that play. He threw it to Karl Malone. Karl Malone dribbled 19 times and then hit a corner 3. Oh, that's an assist. No. So I think ESPN's just a little bit off on this stuff, personally. But anyway, Al Woods also had a pressure. So Al Woods had a really nice game. He made multiple plays in the running game, and he got pressure on Wilson on one of his plays, and he only played 21 snaps. So the defensive line, which a lot of people said did not look great against the Broncos, was able to actually generate a decent amount of pressure. And when you keep in mind that they were playing some of that 3-4 stuff, and they were playing some almost wide 9 stuff, it's not bad. I'm not against it at all. Monet didn't get any, and Adams and Collier didn't play, so of course they didn't get any, but not bad. Okay, let's get to the edge rushers, and this one's going to be kind of controversial here because a lot of people, with good reason, have pointed out that Daryl Taylor didn't play a great game against the Broncos. Now, I'm going to say this. Most of his problems stemmed from the run game. I don't think he played the run well. I do think he was able to generate pressure on Wilson, and I think he got robbed of pressure, maybe even sacks, because of uncalled holding penalties, some really, really bad ones. But this is another instance where I think you're seeing some of these edge rushers get pressure on plays where there's a screen. So yes, Wilson gets pressured, but it doesn't really ruin the play because at worst, Wilson's able to quickly get the ball out anyway. And at best, it means that it's actually going according to plan. So you look at 4 pressures, and that's really good, and it is. I would be a little careful with that number, but I do think that he played a little better than some people are giving him credit for when it came to rushing the quarterback, personally. So 4 for Darrell Taylor. It's a little inflated, but still. Nwosu, who had a great game, obviously, 3 quarterback pressures, and they gave Mafe 2. And like with Taylor, when it comes to Mafe's 2 pressures, I think they both came on plays where the guy that Mafe was covering, would have been covering if he didn't come on the blitz, caught a pass. So, yes, Mafe gets in there and rushes Wilson, but Wilson gets the ball out to where Mafe vacated when he blitzed. So, it's not the same value as a pressure that actually breaks up the play or gets a sack or even creates a turnover. But I think it does illustrate that these guys were a little more impactful than we gave them credit for. Maybe they're not as impactful as these numbers say, but I don't think they played as badly as some people seem to think coming out of that one. Linebacker, Barton had the 1 sack, so that's where his 1 pressure came from. Brooks, nothing. Ballore, nothing. So we saw a little bit of linebacker blitzing, and it actually paid off, although amusingly, Barton was supposed to blitz on the play on the final drive where he dropped Javonte for a 4-yard loss, and he didn't realize he was supposed to blitz. If he did blitz, Javonte's probably in the end zone, by the way. If you look at that play, if Cody Barton doesn't make that play, I don't know who does, but I think Javonte gets to the end zone. I really do. There's nothing in front of him but blockers. But yeah, Cody Barton had the 1 pressure, the 1 sack, so he made some plays out there. He did good. Nothing from the cornerbacks, which you would expect. I didn't see any cornerback blitzing, or at least very, very little against the Broncos. So that wasn't really any kind of a thing. And we did get 1, and unfortunately, it's going to be the last one of the year for Jamal Adams. And that was the play where he got hurt, actually. So tragic. But his final tally for the year will be 1. And it remains to be seen if anybody's going to be able to replace that production as a blitzer. Well, I don't mean you're going to replace the numbers. You're never going to do that. Adams was one of the greatest blitzing safeties in NFL history. Despite his short career, he's an all-time great blitzing safety. But you can replace some of it with some of these guys. Can Josh Jones do a little bit of blitzing? Maybe. Time will tell. But anyway, you add it all up, and that's 16 pressures. And I saw some other sites say we had 8 pressures against the Broncos. So that's just the discrepancy that you're going to see from site to site partially. It's also partially that on some of these plays, it was multiple players getting pressure. And it also just has to do with the fact that some of those pressures, I think some people think they don't really count because the play doesn't get disrupted. It's a screen pass. You were supposed to get pressure. The other team wanted you to get pressure. They just got the ball out. PFR doesn't really do that kind of stuff. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. There's your Pass Rush Friday.